The station called Meridian Halo did not orbit a star, it embraced one. An artificial sun burned quietly inside a sphere thousands of kilometers wide, its light filtered through layers of crystalline gravity fields that painted every corridor with shifting rivers of silver and violet. Entire ecosystems floated between transparent bridges, while schools of luminous creatures swam through the air as though gravity were merely an old superstition. Delegates from hundreds of civilizations crossed paths beneath enormous vaulted ceilings where living metal slowly reshaped itself to accommodate every imaginable atmosphere. The summit had been called the most important political gathering in 8 million years. Naturally, half the delegates had already begun arguing before registration was complete. An insectoid ambassador loudly accused the silicon-based senator of stealing a parking orbit. I reserved dock ring 12. You reserved dock ring 12 yesterday. It is still emotionally mine. Nearby, a spherical merchant species had somehow become wedged inside an oversized ceremonial doorway. I regret accepting the deluxe diplomatic package. 3 maintenance drones immediately arrived, studied the situation, and produced a tiny electronic sigh before inflating the doorway instead of moving the delegate. The corridor erupted in applause. Watching all of it with composed amusement was one of the Council's brightest diplomatic stars. Her name carried influence across hundreds of systems, but before anyone noticed her reputation, they noticed her appearance. Her pale sapphire skin shimmered beneath the station's artificial sunlight, revealing delicate crystalline veins that glowed softly beneath the surface like rivers of liquid starlight. 4 elegant eyes rested upon her face, moving independently whenever conversations unfolded around her, allowing her to observe several people simultaneously. Flowing behind her head drifted dozens of slender, luminous tendrils that replaced ordinary hair. They floated gracefully through the air, changing color with every passing emotion. Calm thoughts painted them turquoise. Curiosity turned them gold. Irritation spread across them in brilliant crimson waves. At the moment, they were becoming increasingly red. Not because of politics, because of the human. Several steps behind her walked the assigned bodyguard. Black uniform, calm expression, measured footsteps. Not a single unnecessary movement. He neither scanned the room dramatically nor rested a hand on a weapon like the guards employed by other civilizations. He simply walked, silent, invisible, despite standing in plain sight. She slowed her pace just enough for him to stop as well. You do realize, she said without looking back, a bodyguard is generally expected to look intimidating. Silence. She glanced over one shoulder. Nothing. Not even the slightest reaction. One of her golden tendrils shifted toward orange. I've seen museum statues display more personality. Still nothing. Nearby delegates exchanged amused glances. An amphibious ambassador leaned toward another official. Perhaps humans communicate through intense disappointment. I thought that was politicians. Fair point. Laughter rippled through the hallway. The human continued walking exactly as before. She exhaled through her nose. Remarkable. Far above them, dozens of miniature translation drones hovered like curious birds. One of them interpreted a nearby alien proverb somewhat incorrectly. Your wisdom shines like fermented algae. The speaker froze. I intended to say morning sunlight. The drone blinked. Updating dictionary. Several diplomats burst into laughter, while the embarrassed delegate covered 3 of his 7 faces. Even the security officer smiled. Only the human remained expressionless. As they entered the primary diplomatic avenue, every wall became transparent. Beyond them stretched the artificial sun itself. Golden plasma curled around impossible magnetic structures larger than planets. Gigantic transport rings drifted lazily through controlled solar flares, while countless ships arrived from every direction, each one representing another civilization. The diplomat paused despite herself. The view never failed to impress. Magnificent. Behind her, silence. She frowned again. You could at least pretend to appreciate history. Nothing. One tiny maintenance robot rolled between them carrying an absurdly oversized toolbox. It stopped in front of the human. Its optical sensor brightened. "Excuse me." The robot extended a mechanical arm. "Would you happen to know where Sector 9 is?" The human quietly raised one finger toward a corridor without speaking. "Oh." The robot rotated happily. "I've been searching for 3 hours." It rolled away before abruptly returning. "I forgot my toolbox." It carefully picked up the enormous container it had somehow forgotten, thanked the silent human twice, then disappeared around the corner. Several nearby delegates chuckled. The diplomat folded two arms. "So?" She looked at the retreating robot. "Apparently maintenance workers receive more conversation than I do." The human offered no answer. Far beneath the station, hidden behind layers of forgotten machinery untouched for millions of years, a sealed chamber briefly awakened. Ancient sensors performed a scan. One biological signature. Recognition. Authorization pending. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, every dormant system returned to silence, leaving behind only a single invisible transmission racing into the endless darkness between the stars. Morning aboard Meridian Halo never truly arrived. The artificial sun simply adjusted its spectrum, washing the immense diplomatic station in warmer shades of gold while millions of microscopic climate drones synchronized every atmosphere layer for the hundreds of species attending the summit. Somewhere, a civilization that breathed methane celebrated sunrise. Just 2 corridors away, another species complained that the lighting was offensively optimistic. The council chamber gradually filled. Seats rose from the living floor as each delegate approached, reshaping themselves according to anatomy. Winged ambassadors received elevated perches. Aquatic representatives settled into transparent floating spheres filled with glowing liquid. One crystalline delegate simply stood where it pleased because chairs were, according to its culture, a confession of structural weakness. The alien diplomat stepped confidently toward her assigned position. Predictably, the silent human stopped precisely 2 steps behind her. Always 2. Never 1. Never 3. She had started noticing the pattern yesterday. She turned slightly. "You planned that distance." Silence. "It wasn't random." "Nothing." She narrowed all 4 eyes. "Are you going to spend our entire assignment pretending wars are illegal?" Not even a blink. One nearby ambassador whispered to another. "I think he's winning." "I believe so." Several delegates hid smiles. The session began before she could formulate another remark. Gigantic holographic star maps unfolded above the chamber, displaying disputed hyperspace corridors, unstable wormholes, and dozens of contested mining systems. Voices overlapped almost immediately. "Our colony predates your claim by 9,000 years. Your calendar skipped 4 centuries. That is irrelevant." "It feels extremely relevant." Elsewhere, another disagreement erupted. "You weaponized the moon." "It was decorative." "It fired at us." "It fired artistically." Translation drones hesitated. E. Context unavailable. The chamber dissolved into scattered laughter. Even the presiding moderator rubbed metallic temples despite possessing no biological head. Throughout the chaos, the human never moved. His eyes wandered across exits, ceilings, ventilation shafts, reflection angles inside polished walls. No one seemed to notice, except someone else. An elderly archivist seated high within the historical observation gallery quietly frowned. Unlike the politicians below, he wasn't watching speeches. He was watching security algorithms. Tiny symbols flickered across an antique monitoring console beside him. Access. Denied. Access. Denied. Every few seconds. Each denial corresponded to exactly one individual. The human. The archivist adjusted his optical lenses. That's impossible. Modern identification systems cataloged everything. Blood chemistry, bone density, neural activity, even emotional fluctuations. Yet every attempt to classify the silent bodyguard vanished from the records, before completion. Not corrupted. Erased. As though the station itself refused permission to remember him. Below, The diplomat continued charming the assembly. Her arguments were sharp, elegant, merciless. She dismantled a trade proposal using nothing more than mathematics and impeccable timing. When applause echoed across the chamber, she smiled, then glanced back. The human remained exactly where he'd always been. She sighed dramatically. I've delivered speeches that started interstellar holidays. Silence. I've negotiated ceasefires lasting centuries. Nothing. I once convinced pirates to pay taxes. Not a reaction. She folded her arms. Surely that deserved at least mild surprise. Behind her, a tiny service drone floated past carrying refreshments. It abruptly stopped beside the human. Apologies, it chirped politely. You appear under-caffeinated. Without waiting for permission, it extended a steaming cup. The human accepted it with a slight nod. The drone rotated happily. My behavioral algorithms indicate you have smiled internally. It floated away before adding, Congratulations. Several nearby delegates laughed openly. The diplomat stared. So, she pointed toward the disappearing drone. Machines speak to you. Silence. They like you. Nothing. I am beginning to find this personally offensive. Still nothing. Far beyond Meridian Halo. Inside the frozen remains of a dead planetary fortress, drifting between galaxies. Ancient reactors awakened. Not fully. Only enough for forgotten processors to exchange encrypted bursts. One transmission became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. Each carried identical priority. Genetic pattern detected. Verify. Across light years, abandoned satellites hidden inside shattered asteroid belts answered. Verification confirmed. Elsewhere, beneath the oceans of an abandoned world where no intelligent life had walked for 4 million years, enormous mechanical eyes slowly opened beneath kilometers of black water. Waiting. Listening. Remembering. Back inside the council chamber, nobody noticed. The debates continued. The jokes continued. The diplomat leaned toward the silent human one final time. I've decided something. No answer. If you speak even one sentence before this summit ends, she smiled mischievously, I'll personally apologize for every joke I've made. The human looked ahead without turning. For the first time, his expression changed. Not into amusement. Not irritation. Something else. A faint awareness. As though he had heard a sound no one else in the chamber could hear. At that exact moment, deep inside Meridian Halo's oldest foundations, a signal older than civilization completed its final verification. One word echoed through machines that had been waiting millions of years. Confirmed. The final day of the summit began with an unusual silence. Not because the delegates had suddenly become more diplomatic. Because every translation drone in the council chamber rebooted at exactly the same moment. One by one, tiny blue lights blinked out. Then return. The moderator frowned. Technical division? A sleepy engineer appeared as a hologram. We honestly have no idea. Can you fix it? They already fixed themselves. Who fixed them? That is the part making us uncomfortable. Scattered laughter drifted across the chamber. Someone muttered, as long as they don't start voting. The meeting resumed. Trade agreements floated as holographic documents between hundreds of delegates. Quantum signatures flashed as civilization after civilization added their approval. For the first time in centuries, peace actually seemed possible. The alien diplomat stood before the assembly with effortless confidence. If today's agreements succeed, future generations may remember this station not as the place where empires competed. She paused. But where they finally learned cooperation. Applause spread through the chamber. Even rivals nodded respectfully. Only one figure remained perfectly still. The silent human behind her. His gaze shifted once. Toward the enormous panoramic wall overlooking the artificial sun. Just once. Then toward an overhead maintenance corridor. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Far above. Nothing appeared unusual. At least, nothing visible. Hidden inside folded space itself, something moved. No alarm sounded. No scanner reacted. No security AI issued a warning. It was as though the intruder existed between the moments machines were capable of observing. Deep inside the station, automated defenses attempted to identify the anomaly. Error. Target not found. Error. Target does not exist. The systems quietly shut themselves down, rather than continue processing an impossible contradiction. The human took one slow step forward. The diplomat noticed from the corner of one eye. There you are. She smiled faintly. I was beginning to think statues had become fashionable. No response. She almost laughed. If this is finally the moment you intend to. Reality cracked. Not exploded. Cracked. A razor-thin fracture of absolute darkness opened in the center of the chamber. No sound. No light. Only absence. From inside emerged a figure wrapped in shifting black geometry that refused to remain the same shape for more than a heartbeat. Every security weapon locked. Every targeting system froze. Every emergency protocol simply stopped. Someone screamed. The assassin raised a weapon that seemed less like machinery and more like a piece of erased reality. Its aim. The diplomat. Everything happened within a heartbeat. The silent human moved. Not quickly. Not slowly. Inevitably. His body intercepted the impossible weapon just as the chamber erupted into panic. The impact produced no explosion. Only a single crimson drop falling onto the polished floor. Silence. The blood touched the metal. Nothing happened. For exactly 1 second. Then, the floor answered. Ancient symbols spread beneath the chamber like rivers of liquid gold, racing through corridors no engineer had known existed. Hidden mechanisms awakened. Deep beneath Meridian Halo. Massive vault doors opened for the first time in millions of years. Across distant star systems, abandoned orbital fortresses illuminated simultaneously. Inside forgotten asteroid fields, silent fleets rotated toward hyperspace. On dead worlds buried beneath glaciers. Planet-sized machines inhaled power. One transmission echoed everywhere at once. Not through radios. Not through quantum communication. Through something older. Genetic authority detected. Inside military headquarters across the galaxy, officers stared as their tactical displays abruptly changed. Fleet command. Transferred. Planetary defense. Transferred. Autonomous weapons. Transferred. One admiral slammed both fists against his console. Transferred to whom? No answer came. Only a new line. Primary heir verified. Back inside the council chamber. Every screen turned black. Then displayed the same ancient emblem. An unfamiliar symbol composed of concentric stars surrounding a single human hand. The assassin hesitated. For the first time, its weapon dim. As though recognizing someone, then it lowered itself, not by choice, by command. The chamber watched in stunned silence. The diplomat slowly turned toward the human. A thin line of blood marked his sleeve. Nothing else. He stood exactly as before, calm, expressionless, as though intercepting impossible assassins were merely another item on today's schedule. Somewhere near the rear entrance, a tiny cleaning robot rolled into the chamber carrying a replacement floor polisher. It stopped, looked around at the frozen delegates, looked at the glowing symbols covering every surface, then quietly beeped. Am I interrupting another committee meeting? No one answered. The robot slowly backed away. I shall return later. It disappeared around the corner faster than anyone thought its tiny wheels could move. No one laughed, because beyond the transparent walls, ships were arriving. Thousands, then tens of thousands. None appeared on any flight schedule. None answered hails. Every vessel was older than recorded history, and every one of them was turning toward the silent human. No one spoke. The silence inside the council chamber felt larger than space itself. Beyond the transparent walls, ancient fleets continued arriving without end. Some ships resembled continents wrapped in silver fire. Others appeared to exist only partially in reality, their outlines flickering between dimensions older than time. Around them drifted colossal defense platforms that modern civilizations knew only from myths. Entire stars seemed to bend slightly as the Forgotten Armada took formation around Meridian Halo. Then, every ship transmitted the same message. Not through speakers, through every system capable of receiving information. Every monitor, every implant, every translation drone, every military network. Supreme authority confirmed. The Council's strategic command desperately attempted to regain control. Reconnect fleet channels. We're trying. Override the command log. It won't accept our authorization. Whose authorization does it want? The answer appeared before anyone could speak. Biological heir required. The alien diplomat slowly turned. Her luminous tendrils, once brilliant with confidence, had faded into a pale violet she had not displayed since childhood. You. The human remained silent. She looked at the glowing symbol beneath his feet. Then at the impossible fleets. Then back at him. I thought. She stopped herself. No clever remark arrived. No sarcastic observation. Only the uncomfortable weight of remembering every joke she had made. I never understood what I was looking at. The human finally met her eyes. For the first time since their assignment began. His voice was calm. Quiet. I know. 2 simple words. Yet somehow they echoed louder than every alarm in the station. Across the chamber, an elderly historian stumbled forward. I recognized that emblem. Every eye turned toward him. My teacher believed it belonged to the architects. He swallowed. We laughed at him. His voice trembled. He said they never disappeared. They left. And they entrusted everything. He stared at the silent man. To one bloodline. Outside, one of the immense precursor warships slowly rotated. Its surface unfolded into countless layers of moving geometry before a voice older than recorded civilization filled the station. Awaiting command. Another answered. Awaiting command. Then hundreds. Thousands. The galaxy itself seemed to repeat the words. Awaiting command. Military leaders held their breath. One order could begin the greatest war imaginable. Or end civilization before anyone realized it had begun. The diplomat whispered, What will you do? The human looked beyond the chamber, toward the countless vessels waiting without question. He remembered the stories spoken long ago. Not about conquest, about responsibility. Power existed to protect. Otherwise it became nothing more than fear-wearing armor. He took one step forward. Every ancient fleet adjusted formation simultaneously. I am giving one command. The chamber became perfectly still. Stand down. Nothing happened. For one heartbeat. Then, every weapon powering across the fleet shut down. Planet killer arrays folded back into dormant configurations. Gravity lances disappeared. Defense rings disengaged. One by one, impossible warships lowered their shields. The galaxy released a breath it did not know it had been holding. Inside military headquarters, across thousands of worlds, command systems slowly returned to their rightful owners. Not because the ancient fleets had been defeated, because they had obeyed. The diplomat stared in disbelief. You could have ruled everyone. The human answered without hesitation. That was never the purpose. She lowered her head. I owe you an apology. You owe yourself a better first impression. For a moment, she laughed. A genuine laugh. Not the polished diplomatic laughter she used during negotiations. The kind that arrived unexpectedly. Even several nearby delegates smiled. Near the entrance, the tiny cleaning robot cautiously rolled back into the chamber. It looked around. No explosions? Someone shook their head. No invasions? Another delegate answered. Also no. The robot happily activated its polishing brush. Excellent. I've been waiting all morning to clean this floor. Several exhausted ambassadors burst into laughter. Even the ancient warship intelligence paused its transmissions for exactly 3 seconds before continuing, as though politely allowing the joke to land. Hours later, the summit concluded. Not beneath the shadow of war, but beneath a promise. The forgotten fleets returned to silence, disappearing into the darkness where they had waited for millions of years. The ancient command protocols remained, with their rightful heir, untouched by ambition. The diplomat boarded her transport beside the same quiet human she had mocked only days earlier. This time, she matched his pace. Not because protocol required it, because respect did. She smiled softly. I suppose I talked enough for both of us. A faint smile finally appeared on his face. Yes. She laughed again. The stars outside continued their endless journey, unchanged. But the galaxy was different. Not because its greatest weapons had awakened, because the one person capable of commanding them had chosen peace over power. Long after Meridian Halo disappeared into the distance, historians would argue about the fleets, the forgotten architects, and the impossible authority hidden within one silent man. Yet those who had stood inside the council chamber remembered something else. The galaxy had not been saved by the strongest voice. It had been saved by the one who never needed to raise it.